Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So I had various experiences with white supremacists, and none of them were the type of experience that would require me to be violent, right? It wasn't like American History X or the movie South Central or A Time to Kill, right? When you come across these people, they're like the white guy next door almost, except for there's certain characteristics they have that make it clear they're not so cool. They're not cool like, certain white people who are cool, maybe certain skaters, certain gay people, certain people who have a very kind of agreeable disposition. They tend not to be white supremacists in terms of, in a narrow sense of the term. But Garrett's friend from Webb, he was somewhat of a white supremacist, and Garrett himself wasn't a racist, right? His mom was pretty nice lady. I actually believe I stayed at his house overnight. I think I went there for some reason, and then we went over there, and then we got some weed and what have you. Now, his name was Garrett Johnson, and that's not a coincidence. There's another guy there named Kevin Park. Okay, and these ideas tend to connect to things in my life that have to do with psychological operations in a way that's definitive. Again, remember, I have 23 witnesses on record to the psychological operations here. So I'm confident that they're occurring, and I'm confident that there's enough evidence for the rational mind to agree that these things have been occurring, are occurring right now, and will continue to occur almost certainly for the rest of my life because of the pattern that we see here and what seems to be their motives. Okay. So there was many times. Several times stick out, right? There's one time I was walking down the road. There's these white supremacists in a vehicle. They flip me off and they're staring at me hard. And I'm thinking maybe they're going to turn around and come back for me. For some reason, I ended up separate from the person I went to town with, right? I mean, we got in an argument or something, I don't know. But I was walking home alone. There was another time when there was this Asian-looking guy who was like, it was like white Asian, and a white guy, and they're both from, they're skinheads in terms of music genre, which is somewhat to be distinguished from actual skinheads, but in some ways it's very similar and like the same thing, right? It gets confusing there, believe it or not. And so they listen to some skinhead ska or rock or whatever it's called, and they're handing out pamphlets, and they hand one to me, and they kind of laugh as they walk away, right? It wasn't like they were just kind of handing out pamphlets, and I don't know, right? It was strange, right? I don't think there's any explanation for why that is. So one thing for sure is they impressed upon me that there's white supremacists there, and just like at the schools, it was a school for privileged kids, right? Boarding school, college preparatory school is exclusive, hard to get into. They reject 2 candidates for every one they accept, is what they said. And so white supremacy was very much a part of the operation, but it's being done by whites, Jews, and LGBT people, and it's being overseen by kind of immature old people. I mean, what kind of person wants little kids to punch someone else in the stomach, okay, and then hide behind the teacher, right? He's not going to look back at that and say, hey, you know what? That guy was bad, and he got over on me. No. He's not going to, when he figures out it's a psyop, he's not going to be like, wow, those guys, get to, harass me with impunity. No. You see what I'm saying? It is stupid to look at it that way. And the type of old people, when they get together who don't get that, are very, very, very out of touch with reality, right? That's what's dumber than that, right? Just unbelievably stupid. So why would people get together and organize? People with degrees, mind you. Electricians and doctors and engineers and so on, and people working construction and politicians, they get together and say, hey, that's the plan, that's the social plan for society, to include this childish Babylon, Babylon, Rothschild, childish harassment. It just doesn't add up, right? So there's that. Also, my friend Terry Price, right? Right there, Terry Price, the word price, right? Going back to people selling their souls. And per ice, I mean, there's so many connections here. Part of it is just the words themselves, where the word price and ice are connected without it necessarily being in someone's name. But the pattern of names, right? Christian Davis, Christ in Davis, okay? Stephanie Poland, Paul on being Iunu, Heliopolis, Roscott Center in the Bible, Genesis 41:45, and it's especially important in regards to how a black person who's done his due diligence would perceive the situation, which is something Masons are very well aware. In fact, they went out of their way to start black Masonic lodges, right? And from the beginning of this country as well, right by around 1776 at that. Okay, while they had slaves and everything. So you have to understand that these names aren't a coincidence, right? Garrett, right? I read a story about a prisoner garroting somebody to death in his cell when he disagreed with him, right? It means like to choke, to squeeze, right? And Garrett Johnson, right? Another word for penis is the Johnson, for whatever reason. And even the word Johnson, John is my middle name, and son, I'm the son of God. I mean, there's these connections where every once in a while some might be a coincidence, but they're not. That's part of why they call them magic spells. And I've taken a picture earlier, it's my other series where that female was on the TikTok, and she's one of many people I've come across who talk about occult magic spells or New Age magic spells or just their kind of liberal Generation Z philosophy and their compartment of that generation, culturally speaking. And they say, watch that words have power and stuff like this, right? Alphabet, not a coincidence. And Masons and social planners love that. They love kind of determining. Keep in mind, Webb, for example, they rejected 2 people for every 1 person they accepted. And country school appealed to certain types of people from certain types of families. And it allowed them to easily, especially if there's technology involved, which almost certainly there is, to easily kind of put people in my class who had certain names and so on and so forth. Okay? That's not a coincidence. They wanted to tell the story a certain way. Sages see themselves as like the narrator of a movie, right? The author of a movie, right? Cruella de Vil, cruel devil. And so, real quickly, I'm going to get into